And day 2 of the Starladder I-League Invitational. We got 3 best-of-3 series on tap for you again today. But looking back at yesterday's action, we saw TNC take out presumptive tournament favorite IG 2-0 in our first series behind 2 surprise first phase Jakiro picks and 2 amazing 20-plus kill performances from their mid-player Cuckoo. In the second series, Alliance was able to outlast hometown favorite Chinese squad Vici Gaming J behind their split pushing strategies. And in the last series of the day, the Filipino powerhouse TNC were to finish perfect 4-0 on the day, 4 first phase Jakiro picks. They are through to Sunday's semifinals. Today we're going to start our action off with Liquid and Faceless on the main stage. As I bring in my 4-man panel, I'm joined by the one and only Dota capitalist Lacoste, as well as Jack, Korean Barbecue to his friends. Guys, what are we looking forward to today?
More Jakiro.
Oh man, really?
I think, yeah, I was looking at some of the Dream League games.
Yep.
It seems like Jakiro's pretty successful as there. TNC definitely, and maybe it's Steven himself, you know, definitely found something out about the patch real quickly. It does seem like also just a lot of fighting around Tier 1 towers.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to give up any tower momentum, it seems.
If we're talking about heroes, as for Liquid, I expect them to go something like Earthshaker off lane, maybe the Rise of the Doom. He got buffed a little bit last version. Also, what do we have? A Tusk or a Phoenix. I think those 4 heroes are really good for Team Liquid, and we've seen them playing them before, and with the recent buffs, I think that's what they're going to go for.
What about Lycan? Is Lycan going to be banned? 1-2?
Yeah,
oh,
probably.
Yeah, keep it out of Liquid.
You got to ban Lycan Wisp, don't you?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm
Is
still
there
not
another
set on
hero
Wisp.
that you ban ahead of Wisp against Liquid?
Well, they need to get rid of the Wisp. Probably in the first phase, we know GH and how he plays it. Also, we need also Kuro can play. They are type of the players that can swap around.
Possibly
maybe
Tree.
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
the Treant and the Lycan in the second phase.
I'd actually like to
10 for certain teams. So we have 2 teams playing today who played in Dream League. Dream League has proven to be an interesting experimentation ground for all these teams. Like you'll see them run very different strategies. For the first series, we have Faceless and Liquid, and these 2 teams have very high draft diversity. They've played very distinct styles, and you know we're looking at their first takes on this new patch as well. So expect to see some interesting stuff coming out.
Yeah, let's talk about Liquid specifically because they're a very interesting team. Their early game has been absolutely sick. If you look back at the last patch in 7.05, there were only 3 players in all of professional Dota that averaged 7.25 or more assists in the first 20 minutes of the game, and they were GH, Matumbaman, and Mind Control.
Yeah,
absolutely sick early game.
Yeah, but that said, I think that favors them a lot, especially in this new patch, because it's like more like a faster game, and if you win an early game, you go through a mid game. Win mid game, you can just easily finish the game after like 20-25 minutes if you just dominate.
Yeah, no, and in fact, that was actually what I was going to ask you guys exactly about, because the Achilles heel for Liquid had been the late game. If you go back against since the release of 7.0, they're 35-5 in matches that end at 40 minutes or before. Past 40 minutes, they're only 18-17. So the late game had been kind of an Achilles heel for them. But are we going to see many 40-plus minute games in this patch?
It doesn't really seem like it, at least to start anyway. It seems like these matches just snowball so quickly. Right. The only chances I think teams really have to be able to go late game in this patch is based around their high ground defense and not giving up that initial Tier 3 tower. As soon as you give away that Tier 3 tower, you lose your shrines, you lose all map control, and you just get crowded out inside your base. And you start having to take risks that just naturally lead to, I think, inevitably a mistake that costs you the game. So I think it's just like most of these games initially for this patch are going to be probably all 40 minutes or less.
If this is a faster, more aggressive patch, going back to the core of this Liquid team around this time last year, they were executing some extremely blazing fast pushes onto high ground. Where they used to run Drow occasionally. You'd see these like 15-minute, 20-minute high ground pushes. If that's still possible in this meta, especially with heroes like, say, Beastmaster being buffed again or maybe being stronger, that's a big core of their identity. They were able to run that very successfully for a while. So if they go back to that, also we saw the last Starlighter, they were the champions, of course. They ran Lone Druid very effectively there, it fit their play style. Since then, you know, there are a couple switches, different players playing Naga. You saw Miracle and the Monkey King at DAC seem to be finding themselves again a little bit. But as you said, if the patch is faster, they've been able to find success in those environments last year, especially around this time.
Yeah, it's not just about the individual heroes, right? It's also about the items. I've always felt Matumbaman is a very good carry playing early on aggressive with 2 small items. And when you talk about Mask of Madness being so much better, of course, Armlet on his signature heroes, Dragonlance is still pretty good even with a minor nerf. I really like this environment in terms of what they're going to be able to do as a team.
Alan, I'm going to force you to pull out a random stat out of your head. How often does Team Liquid go for aggro tri-lanes or aggro dual lanes?
Not very often, because they like to have, they were having a problem for a little while with mind control getting off to poor starts, and they like to have at least an option to have an aggro dual lane for the first couple minutes behind him.
Yeah, I was thinking about how Liquid play, and I think that they may have to start doing more aggro dual lanes, because I think one of the heroes that could really be beneficial for them in this patch is Beastmaster.
Yep.
It is probably one of the slowest offlaners that may still be compatible with the patch. I think otherwise you're still looking at like the Earthshakers and Clockworks that we're talking about, but specifically for Team Liquid, I think that may be a potential specialty hero, and honestly something that Mind Control kind of needs. To be honest, his performance has been very lackluster over the last, ever since TI. He needs something. They need to help him out a little bit. I don't know if it's confidence. I don't know if it's the heroes that he's playing exactly that he's maybe not feeling the best on.
What in particular would you criticize about his play?
I think he's just, when it comes to his initiations, I think they're not on point all the time. I think his play throughout team fights has been a bit lackluster. I think his laning phase has been kind of met as well, you know.
But what about right now? I mean, the meta changed, the offlane changed. It's so much harder to play an offlane right now. He's gonna have troubles there. Even so, what they need to do is probably just try to get one more hero rotating there earlier, maybe a Chen and Ench, just to try to help him out. Or the other thing he can do with that signature hero of his, Beastmaster, just try to move to the forest early on. But they have some kind of protection for him there, especially if you're playing against a hero that is like a Treant, just scouting there, or a Riki.
So you guys mentioned Treant in particular as a hero that you might still consider first phase banning. How much of a nerf do you think the change to Guise was? I think that hero is probably not. I don't know that I would ban him first phase anymore.
I think that Living Armor is still because we saw there was definitely 2 different styles of playing the Treant Protector. You would go for the maxed out Nature's Guise on some more aggressive laning focused trees, and then you would get the Living Armor maxed for the other ones. I think now pretty much everyone's going to go for the Living Armor max because we want to focus on these towers. Right, because everyone is moving around the map so much to be able to protect those towers, that leaves openings for chip damage here and there, and Living Armor repairs all of that. It's such a unique mechanic that allows you to be able to stay more grouped up and receive less punishment as a result, right? It doesn't matter if you're staying 3-man in a lane for, a minute, because if that chip damage is happening up in the top lane and it goes down to half health, well, you're just going to rotate up there eventually before the tower dies, and it's going to heal up to full. So I still think Treant Protector is going to be very big in this patch, just from the way that I'm looking at especially the Dream League games. I was really watching the movement of the teams and how teams like VP and how Na'Vi move around, and it felt like nobody wanted to give up a tower. Like everyone was just like move from lane to lane to lane and back and forth, just because those initial advantages, they just seem to snowball so quickly.
No, in fact, that was something that we talked about in kind of our pre-show yesterday when we were doing a little bit of patch analysis, that there might be a renewed focus on wave spam in the mid. And with wave spam comes a hero like Lina, who's not a native pusher necessarily. All of a sudden, part of that value behind wave spam is she gets a lot of chip damage on that tier 1 tower mid. Treant, that's all gone. That's not going to take the tower anymore.
Yeah, that's why Shadowfiend is also a good mid lane hero right now. Again, he pushes the lane fast, and he can just go to jungle. Again, every minute stack the creep camp and just clear that out again, and the tower goes down. As also the priority is to ban out Treant, I think, for every team, because when your tier 1 tower goes down, the map just opens for you and you can take the enemy forest. Also, the biggest problem about Treant is the tier 3 tower, actually. I mean, that's the hardest thing to push still right now, and I think that's the biggest objective to take.
You mentioned
the
mid
shrines
heroes
are
that
open.
can help your mid from across the map with a heal, especially without the shrine to lean on. You mentioned Dream League as well. Secret was running tree and a lot of aggressive tri-lanes too. This hero, like, not just the guys might have been changed a little bit, but he still has very strong lane presence in a tri-lane. someone that you don't really want to trade hits with, someone who can make laning very uncomfortable for slightly weaker cores. So he still has that impact there no matter where you put him.
Yeah, ultimately he's still an Ogre Magi, right? Like he's still a hero that nobody wants to fight. Like nobody wants to punch the tree because he punches back and he punches twice as hard as you. So I think that's still a significant factor for the laning phase. So I think all around, like, tree still value. We'll see how these teams look at the hero, but I think overall in the patch, it's going to be quite big. I want to touch on what you were talking about, being able to take the tower. We saw that from last patches that Lina's would push out this wave and they would take the tower pretty early. And that taking the tower is actually so imperative because once you've taken that tower, you can play off map as the Lina and rotate to these side lanes, and your impact is felt like twofold. Like all of a sudden the map gets a whole lot scarier when she's able to just push out a wave, and instead of the wave hitting the tier 1 tower and bouncing back, it pushes all the way into the tier 2 and enters into jungle areas. Become open into or her presence just not being in the mid is less noticed because you don't have that kind of vision in the mid lane. She's able to go to side lanes for free for longer periods of time. I think that that was so big in the last patch, and it's even bigger now and easier to attain in the new patch.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more. You used to talk a lot in the last patch about these jungle invasions, right? I think in this patch it's going to be more of a slow creep. It's going to be more slow establishment of map control of the other teams' neutrals. Let's talk a little bit about this Faceless team as both teams getting ready to come on stage here. We're going to introduce the players in the next couple of minutes. I wanted to talk to you guys about Faceless, though, because this is a team that had been just completely dominant in SEA play for a period of last year. They basically qualified for every LAN. Little bit shakier, though, lately. 23 and 29 in their last 52 games since 7.03 release. They were defeated in the Epicenter qualifiers by Clutch Gamers. Looked okay at Kiev, but got what many people considered a slightly fortunate draw when they drew TNC in the first round of that single elimination bracket. Where do you think they are right now as a team?
Well, every single team that we have right now, I think, is in the same situation. Like they need to prove themselves, and I mean, both Faceless and Liquid finished 5th to 8th at Kiev. So I think Faceless is a kind of a team that is hard to play against, especially when Winter started coaching them. He brings so much to the team, and I think if they ban out Ice heroes, that's what they need to focus on. Also, but as for Faceless, if Jabs plays a good mid, they can win the early game and the mid game. But I kind of feel that he's struggling to get there, like try to don't. He's one of the players that reminds me of Ana, actually, even though Ana got a lot better. He tends to lose the early game, but doesn't manage to come back as Ana does.
I'm going to fight you a little bit on that last point, because I think actually when I'm watching a lot of these SEA games, that is part of the reason that a lot of these other SEA teams like TNC have been much more competitive against Faceless in the last few months. They've actually stopped banning out like 4 out of 5 Ice heroes. And I think what you've seen more recently against them is that people have been banning more of Jabs' heroes because he's got a relatively small hero pool. He went a stretch of about 20 or 30 games where I think 85–90% of them were Ember Spirit and Invoker, with a little bit of Alchemist thrown in, especially at Kiev. But that, to me, I think you have to ban Jabs' heroes and you have to start thinking about banning Nuts heroes.
I agree with both of you, actually. I think that while we have seen that, and for the last patch, it was better for those C teams to be able to do it, I think going forward in this new patch, Ice, as a player, got a buff. I think Ice, the way I've looked at offlane and the way I like rated my offlaners pre-TI was that I felt like Universe and Ice were two of like top 4 offlaners, and they represented very different styles. And I think that the Ice's play style of the aggressive, ganking, very active offlaner who is able to make plays around the map, I think that got a significant buff in this patch, where you're able to get your level 6 on a hero and play off map, and then you have neutrals to be able to work off more often, and then you're able to make these plays in these other lanes and constantly play the in and out that Ice is. I think he's one of the best players in the world at it. It's that he's able to read movement and how to avoid vision in order to make successful ganks.
Well, in the 7.0 patch, the off lane was the new safe lane. Right now, it's not anymore, and it's good for Ice because he's the player that can adapt so quickly. And I mean, before it was the suicide lane, and now it seems like it's again. So for Ice, I think it's really good, and they should focus on his bans again.
Talking with a Chinese coach, or talking with Mikasa yesterday, they're saying this should be Ice's patch. He's a master at like mixing it up. There's a term in Chinese called hun, where it's like you get into a lane where you don't really belong, things are really rough, but you manage to just extract something out of it, just be a thorn in their side, and he's a master at doing that. That said, though, with their playstyle the last few months, like they seem to have this 3-core lineup very often. Sometimes it demands too much off the map. I feel like in that final game against OG at Kiev, for example, when they had the Tiny and the Bristleback, like the timings were a little bit off in terms of experience, the levels that they needed. So that's something that might be a pitfall for them. Their supports tend to be like a bit behind and under level. If we're expecting more support duo movements and stuff, that could be an issue for them going into the mid game. For Jabs, you mentioned, I think that's really critical as well, because they often, you mentioned the similarity with Anna, they often let Jabs go sometimes, or they don't protect him as much. And so if he already has a kind of limited hero pool, and you're not protecting him in a patch where we expect mids to be more important, it could be a tough sell for them going forward.
Yeah, in fact, we saw that happen in a couple of the games yesterday with OP on Ticker, for example, and then I believe in the last series last night, the Timbersaw of Limp just getting crushed by Cuckoo. It seemed like several times yesterday, Cuckoo just won games almost single-handedly in the mid lane when the opponent just didn't help their mid laner who was dying 4 times in the first 8 minutes.
Yeah, that's what seems to be the problem for mid laners right now. If you lose that super early game in the like 5 to 7 minutes, it's hard to come back into the game if they just continue to put the pressure on you.
Speaking of that, we're talking about mid so much. Do we think that that having last pick is more valuable in this patch? Because I think having the stronger mid matchup is a huge advantage in this patch. And I think most of the teams are kind of agreeing that if you don't have last pick, then you're kind of like at a serious disadvantage, and where you have to like 4th pick your mid at some point in time and go for a last pick carry or something like that, because you know that matchup is not going to be favorable to you, and you have to do something else to be able to secure it. But if you're forcing your supports into the mid lane, then you're not able to do as much with your off lane or your safe lane, or shut out the enemy off lane, or those sort of situations.
Yeah, I think that you could have said, there have been a number of patches going back several years now where either first pick or now with the change, last pick has been kind of blatantly OP, right? When there's a small pool of heroes that everybody knows that's very OP, or when there's a small group of heroes that really counter certain lineups super hard. So I think it's a little bit early to say that that's a general fact about this patch, simply because we've seen one side or the other have very large advantages early in previous patches.
I think we did see that a little bit yesterday, actually. I think we saw the OD into the DK, we saw Lina into the Timbersaw, Lina into Tinker. Like generally speaking, Lina probably received a few nerfs in the last patch with the respawn talents and such. But now she's still a strong mid pick, but when you need that kill potential or that strong presence in mid, Lina becomes a better pick later on as a counter to some of these other heroes. I think we did see some of that yesterday.
Yeah, it's just because in the previous patch, right, what happened is the game was just so much slower. The game, it was very hard to push high ground, the neutrals respawn slower, so the build-up was a lot more gradual, and if you lost a lane earlier, if one of your cores got really behind, you had plenty of time to build back up. And this is what OG exploited with Anna in so many games, as you guys have been saying. In this patch, lopsided laning matchups can just absolutely kill you. I think the top teams will make that adjustment in terms of having those emergency support rotations ready within a week.
Or maybe having, there's also certain mids that are like kind of always okay, and maybe we see some of those, like if you don't have the last pick, then you pick up, like I think Lina is probably a pretty good example. I think SF, if you have a reliant like support that's going to be able to stack for you, I think that's maybe another core that, you know, can definitely make a quick comeback if you have a bad laning phase. Maybe that's like how they'll kind of deal with the fact that we're going to have a bad matchup. The enemy team's going to have a superior mid matchup. Maybe we just have to make sure we kind of cut that down as much as possible.
Well, really quickly, we introduced the Faceless lineup to you here a few minutes ago. Let's at least briefly put the Liquid roster here up on screen. Most of these players need no introduction. Of course, Miracle, their superstar mid, the first player in the world to reach 9K MMR. GH, the support player coming onto the scene relatively recently. Matamaman, a very active mid-game focus carry. I agree with you, Mind Control is their key player going forward. He was one of the best offlaners last year before TI. Hasn't necessarily been as consistent this year. And of course, Kuro recently became the first ever pro player with 900 career Pro Dota 2 wins.
Only 900, huh?
Hey, he was surprised it was that many.
900 wins, but not 9K MMR. Come on, Kuro. Step it up.
He said, in his words, I got three 9K teammates. They carry me. Somehow, I don't know about that.
Well, at DAC, they asked him, so who's going to be, you got 3 9K players, who's going to be the first 10K on your team? And they all all the teammates looked at Kuro, and they were like, Kuroki, because he's the lowest right now. So.
I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
I think, from my experience anyway, it doesn't seem like Kuro cares too much about it.
No, I think Kuro's
Yeah.
got better things.
They're just having some fun with him, for sure.
What's that?
Is anyone even close to 10K right now?
Mid one was
9.5.
Yep.
Yeah, I was like, Jesus.
That's
Yeah,
not
and
even
that guy's
20K.
crazy.
Yeah, that guy's super motivated.
Another thing I wanted to bounce off ask you guys about, which we haven't really mentioned, was the change to the creep aggro. So in terms of the duration and the cooldown. So it seems to me that for both offlane and mid, this makes it more punishing for the weak laner as well, because before you'd be able to just say keep pulling the creep back, or just trying to get it to the point where you could last hit at least, or at least trade evenly in the lane. But now for a hero like Lina especially, like a buff to her in a sense, you can get off maybe more free hits without creep aggro, in terms of being able to, as I said before, Huynh, like just kind of mix it up in that lane.
Like
it's
that
harder
word.
for you to do so. So
yeah, that definitely,
that affects
that's
the
actually the
mechanics.
second time in the last, I think they did it either just before 7.0 or in 7.0 itself. They did almost the same thing. And this has actually been a recurring theme going back to at least Manila. I remember talking to Bruno about it, that a lot of people on the Dota 2 team have felt that the more technical aspects of laning have gotten de-emphasized in the last year and a half, and they really are trying to combat that.
That was actually one of the things that Ice was a master of, it being able to pull creep aggro off of like crazy situations where he shouldn't. Like he would pull a whole entire creep wave off of a neutral pull, you know, and he would just he would keep pulling it and keep pulling it. And you would think like, you know, if you actually try that, it's actually rather difficult to time the aggro every single time it goes back into the favor of the neutrals, you know, to actually continue to pull it away from the neutral creeps. You know, if you're not good with that timing, it actually just kind of juggles back and forth, and you're going to lose like some creeps. But he could always consistently just like pull the whole entire wave off of a neutral camp, and then pull it back to his tower, and that's how he's able to get such easy farm out of his
even
lane.
the creeps love him. They just gravitate towards him, right?
Yeah, everybody loves Daryl, man.
Can't help it. No, that's actually also a good point. An important aspect of those creep aggro changes is that it may make some of these like really wonky, unbalancing mid pulls a little bit harder to pull off. But I don't know. I'm still waiting for somebody to try and exploit the ice shard changes and do some shenanigans with Tusk. We'll see.
I think Liquid is going to be the first team to actually pull out that hero.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a classic Kuro hero, or even a GH. GH maybe not that good. I saw him playing it recently. Kuro does so much better on it.
Kuro's a very
when we were playing on Veggies last year, back when Blitz was coaching Liquid, we would just play like Liquid, right? Because that's how Blitz like understood Dota. He understood Dota learning from Kuro. So he then passed that on to us, and that was what we were always playing. We were playing like Tusk Phoenix. Like that was me and Purge every single time we played Tusk Phoenix, because that was the way that they like to be able to play Dota, is this Tusk being able to make these early like 2 or 3 minute rotations from the safe lane into the mid lane, and Tusk is by far one of the best heroes to do so with a duo because of that snowball or because of ice shards. And then we changed into a patch where it was just solo this 4 position, where you saw Tree and Monkey King and Riki and those kind of heroes. And those kind of rotations, those 2-man rotations aren't nearly the same. So I think we're kind of going back to, we alluded to that yesterday, right? Is that the duo of the supports have to work together a lot more, and Tusk I think fits that perfectly.
Yeah, but Tusk in general as a level 1 hero is one of the strongest gank setups. even when he hits level 2, he's like 3 times stronger than he was on level 1. Also, during the mid-game fights, you should just focus on blocking the spots. I think the Dota space became so much smaller, so it's easier to block, and heroes like Clockwork and Tusk should be used more just because of that.
Yeah, the creating terrain aspect. Tusk is a hero that came on really strong in the last few weeks as well. We've seen Liquid is one of the teams that have been using it, picking it very early, quite a bit. Secret as well, and obviously like the tremendous presence, the lane and gank potential, the roaming potential, and also as a setup for some heroes that they run frequently, like Lycan or something. If you're pinned against the wall, you're not going anywhere. So
because you brought this up, Cap, that was something that when I was talking to Blitz about this last year on a number of occasions, he was continually talking about we try to play fast. The way that we win is to try to play faster than the other team consistently. And that style of play, when we talk about we think Liquid is going to be very good in this version, that style of play was problematic in the last patch because you play fast, you get yourself ready to push high ground at 20 minutes, and
you hit a wall.
Yeah. In this patch, that wall, it's down.
And they also, I think, had to solve the. I think it was the patch as well as the problem of their cores, right?
Yeah.
Matu and Miracle both I think they occupied a little bit too much space initially when they worked together.
This is something I wanted to bring up.
Matu got a lot better at being able to be way more active than he used to. Yeah.
When you know, this is something I wanted to bounce off you guys, and we got a couple minutes before the game starts here. One of the things that I see with Liquid going into late game, a problem that they have persistently is one of the 3 cores, typically either Mind Control or Matumbaman, will fall behind. And they don't do as good a job at prioritizing getting that hero caught up in farm as, say, OG does with Ana.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's all. I mean, that's a little bit why we would see Mind Control suffer so much, right? Is that he would oftentimes be the one that would kind of be let out. And because, in some ways you do have to kind of base your lineup around Miracle and make sure he does get what he needs to. And so if Mind Control's the one suffering and that they don't create some sort of space or relocate him to another lane or something to be able to make that comeback, then you're always playing with subpar farm. And, most people are going to look bad, even pro players. Most players are going to look bad when you're operating on like a subpar amount of farm. And everybody looks good when they have a lot of farm, like all these sick plays come out with a force, you have a Force Staff and Glimmer Cape and Ghost Scepter as a support, but when you have none of those items, you just kind of feed over and over
try
again.
to play with a brown boots and make some sick plays,
not gonna happen. Not at this level anyway.
So from our perspective, I think it's easy somewhat to kind of hit on Mind Control for playing because that's the way he was operating, right? He was operating with poor circumstances.
I mean, the last game they played in Dream League, it actually happened with Matumbaman. It happened with a Matumbaman Lycan that just got behind in farm. And I think at a certain point, you got to have that alarm bell as a team. You got to say, look, one of our core players doesn't have what he needs to be successful and impact this game like he's capable. Let's stop. Let's give him some farm priority. At times, I think they get so fixated on Miracle's farm and his ability to just get this huge lead. You got to sometimes shift that farm priority a little.
And that's because Matumbaman became more active, so it's a kind of a double-edged sword. If you're more active and the gank goes wrong, team fight goes wrong, you're falling a lot behind because of it. If it goes well, then it's a good.
Man, I wish Witch Doctor, every time I see Nuts, I wish Witch Doctor was still a thing, because his Witch Doctor was so entertaining. One of the all-time greats on that hero.
It might be. It's not a bad
it was
pushing
so
support,
bad
right?
statistically in the last patch. It was like so awful.
It was. Maybe in this new patch though, he could. He's a strong laner. He's pretty good support for pushing down towers. I think in the last patch you prioritized Maledict almost always over Voodoo, but now maybe we go back to the Voodoo.
And heal,
better
That's
for
a good point.
pushing. Yeah.
With no shrines available, those sources of regen, efficient sources of regen, become more important.
Yeah. Also, he gets 2 extra bounces on level 15 instead of that respawn talent.
Oh, that's right.
Also,
true.
his Aghanims has a True Strike, so heroes like PA, Solar Crest, I mean, you can still hit.
It's true. Yeah, you tend not to think too much about evasion with Death Ward because it has this weird mechanic where I think it has no interaction with damage block, but the primary projectile can still miss. The bounces can't, but the primary projectile can still miss.
And same goes for Cleave, right? It's
the
same
same
mechanic.
it's the same idea. That's right. Well, as we see the players on stage here, we have, of course, hopefully most of our fans will be already aware from social media that we've had a little problem with internet at the venue this morning that's delayed our start time, but we do have all 10 players on stage. I believe we are going to be able to get going here shortly. But guys, any other thoughts? Anything we haven't covered that has occurred to you here?
I'll bring something up. Unique modifiers, attack modifiers.
Oh, there are only, okay.
What's left?
3 of them. What are they? There are 3.
Viper.
I don't like pop quizzes, Alan. Come on.
Viper's not. Nope.
Viper's not
nope,
anymore.
Viper's not. Two are hero. Two are hero. Nope. Two are hero abilities.
Anti-mage.
Anti-mage is left.
Um,
The other one's a mid.
The other one is what?
Is a mid hero. OD Orb is still left.
Okay.
And then technically speaking, even though it's already had this weird interaction with ranged attacks, doesn't count. Technically speaking, the lifesteal from Mask of Madness and Satanic are still UAMs. But anyway, those are, so if you look it up, those are the only 3 technically that are still UAMs. They're almost dead.
And all the items are gone, right?
Yes. Well, except for the lifesteal.
Is the glaive not a UAM? Is the silencer glaive not a UAM?
I don't believe so.
So you can lifesteal out of.
Anyway, I have
glaive?
not tested all of these. I just looked this up the other day, and those are the only 3 that are still listed.
I
But
still think there's something
take it
left.
with a grain of salt.
That's not very rigorous testing, Alan.
No.
You're not much of an authority. Come on.
I was busy making meme Warlock videos, so.
Okay.
Anyway,
So
trying to get, like, 8
what
goals.
does that mean? Is there anything that changed in the last patch that?
Drow got changed.
Well, the
her frost arrows.
The Desolator
and
has
then,
become available for the Drow as well, but Desolator now is in the diffusal property of not being a UAM and taking up that slot. So
remember that the whole thing is right that both things that you're considering getting have to be UAMs to create a problem. If one of the things still is tagged as a UAM, like anybody can buy Deso now, for example. It didn't matter if Drow's frost arrows hadn't been changed; she could still get Deso.
As for an old school player, it's hard for me to digest that you can have like a Deso, Mjolnir, lifesteal, slow, everything.
Well, cost it back from the Stone Ages, when you could only have.
Tell me about
and
it.
a basher, right?
When you had to, what was it like? Clinks with Deso. You had to
use once for Deso and then just searing arrows.
Yeah,
you just use it once.
You use it once and then you switch to searing arrows. Yeah, I remember that. The weird little quirky mechanics that don't.
Also, someone
we are now
being
being roundly
the
flamed,
Deso once on a Viper, and it was like mind blown.
Who did?
I can't remember, but it was like a lot of discussion about that. So
I think
you just slow once, hit it with the Deso, and then try to slow a few more times, hit it with the Deso when it's off cooldown.
That's interesting because Deso, we see an item. It's a very cost-effective damage item, and it's often used to help accelerate pushes as well. So, you would see, for example, an AEY hero like an Ursa getting it where other players didn't. But also now for heroes that have less obvious uses for that. So obviously, like the Drow was also a good pusher. Something like a Viper, which wasn't played maybe as much this last patch, but often the issue with that hero is you don't want to fight into it, but can he take objectives for you? So maybe, if you get Desolator on him, it's more of a glassy, more of a damage build, makes him more of an immediate threat.
That's always kind of OP.
It's really good.
Did it get nerfed at all? Did it get a increase in gold cost or anything?
No, the last couple changes have been buffs.
It's crazy.
Other than the Blightstone not being available
gold
at
to
the side
damage
shop.
efficient.
Yeah, but imagine Viper. I mean, with his recent changes, he still deals damage to a tower. With a Deso, he's just an insane pusher. Plus, he's a one-on-one dominator on a mid lane.
Yeah, no, it was interesting how you said that earlier about Deso, that some people had got it before the conflicts were changed. I actually always thought that that was a little bit overrated. Like, you could buy Deso because once you hit somebody with Deso, the buff persists. And so if you're a Drow, you can hit somebody with Deso, you can hit somebody with frost arrows and just alternate. You still get both effects. And like I always thought the Maelstrom Deso interaction was fine, right? You place the buff, and when the Maelstrom procced it, overrode it, but you could still get value out of both items. Anyway, enough mechanical.
I love the draw with Deso though. I mean, you get a Pike, you get a Deso, and you can finish the game.
That's what I mean about. I think like carries that can play with 2 small items and 1 mid-tier item. Like when you look at a Drow building Pike, Mask of Madness, and Deso, I think that hero hits her peak at around the time where if you have any kind of lead as a team, you're all of a sudden just going to be able to steamroll into base.
You want to add the Mask of Madness on top of that as
yeah,
well?
Yeah, dude, why not? Dude, Mask of Madness is, oh,
BM,
come on.
Troll, Alti.
I was kind of thinking about it, though. I was thinking about Drill Ranger, and I was thinking the same thing. It was like, doesn't it kind of fit the patch? But I think there's something about the hero that it's like too squishy, right? The change up is that we still want these like Troll and Lycan and these other heroes that are like significantly have like a significant amount of tank to them, right? That actually soak up quite a lot of damage and they have a consistent output. Whereas Drill Ranger, the right kind of initiation can just like be gone.
I am down with that point, but I still think the biggest problem with Drow is that there are even certain tri-lanes, certain defensive tri-lanes that she can get. If she's up against a dual lane with lane shove, like she cannot last hit under tower. She just gets, she can have a terrible laning phase so easily.
Yeah, you don't have very many comeback mechanisms.
Yep.
Cap, adding to your point too, like because of that, a hero like that with high damage output usually isn't going to have like the best damage environment. Like you won't create a situation unless you've lost the fight where she's just like freely right-clicking away as much, and so that adds value for like a physical burst type of hero to be able to have a Desolator.
Yeah.
You see that effect on Clinks, right? Like he counts on that burst damage to be able to bring someone down quickly. He's not going to be right-clicking away necessarily for the whole fight unless you've lost the fight badly, and so that's where the Deso can contribute value as well.
All right.
What do you think about the changes on Clinks though? Is it the buff or is it the nerf?
I think it's a buff.
Yeah, it's a huge quality of life improvement at the very least. But I do think it's a buff just because there were so many situations you'd run into where you got in, by the time you got to a tower or got into a fight, you had like 10 seconds left on that buff.
That's the buff, but what about level 2, previous level 2? Like you could use it pretty much all the time.
No, I mean, the nerf aspect of it is, of course, that it's no longer really a farming tool, which it used to be. But I think Clinks, if you see how Clinkses are built now, Clinkses are built now with enough early damage items that they farm plenty fast.
I didn't see any Clinks, though.
Yeah, I was thinking about Clinks. There's also the 20% nerf on neutrals. That hurts him quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there are more camps available, but as a Clinks, you're not sitting there and farming through camps. You're you're eating one creep and killing the small creep and moving on with your life, right? So
but it's a bigger cooldown,
I think that hurts him.
So
no, I mean,
with less XP on that creep.
I'm a little mixed on the ult change being a nerf because one of the good features of that hero is that once he has his soul ring or that source of mana up, he never has to go back to base. And part of that is being able to sustain constant like dark death packs to be able to keep up his life. Like say you're in the middle of a fight or you just came back from a fight or you see a wagon or something or you're in the neutrals, you get that damage constantly, you get that restoration of health constantly. I feel like that sustain is a big part of the viability of the hero, not having to go home basically once you have your mana items up. And I think that with this longer cooldown, it's better in those extended fights or longer skirmishes, but in terms of you don't have to stop and go and eat a creep. But in terms of his sustain and map presence, I think that actually hurts him.
You guys might have convinced me on this, I think. I when I first saw it, thought, okay, this is definitely an unambiguous buff, but that's a very compelling argument.
When I read it first, I thought it was a buff, then I thought about it a little bit, and it seems like it's more of a nerf than it's a buff.
I personally think it's the 20% that is going to hurt him more, but I do feel like in this patch, like it is important for him to be able to have this reliable buff because the one problem with him in Drill Ranger, like you don't have any lane shove, right? So I feel like as a hero, you can't spend too much time like just moving without pushing out a wave, right? So and if you have this buff that lasts longer, then maybe you have a longer presence in lane. You're pushing in lanes farther, but I still think ultimately he doesn't quite fit. Kind of the same reason as Drill Ranger, right? There's just like too many weaknesses and just not enough strengths that you bring to the table.
He does need experience in lane before he gets going to become an annoying laner. And like he's good at destroying towers, but he's not great at pushing waves out. And that, as you mentioned. But also, like I think it's scary playing against the Clinks when you have a situation where he's like off the map and he could be anywhere and he's constantly able to get that massive source of damage boost just off that like the death pact whenever. Be able to eat that creep, and then as a Clinks you can be much more active early on. As soon as you get 6, you eat that creep. It like basically doubles your damage output, and you become you can't really man fight him because he's got a ton of more HP as well. So then the windows for that become a little bit more demanding if you don't have the cooldown as frequently.
That's true, but I think that at the same time there's going to be, because we're grouped up more in this patch, like that's a lot less opportunities for Klinks, right? He likes to be able to have 3 cores spread across the map, and the 2 supports preferably that are kind of spread as well, and you just kind of take your time picking and choosing what heroes to kill and what lanes to like kill that hero and then try and take his tower, you know. And now it's like I feel like everyone's going to be clumped up. Another reason why Drow Ranger not really going to fit, right? Drow Ranger doesn't like clumped up team fights.
Remember, like around this time last year, they always had these lineups where it was like one push, like a Death Prophet or a Lycan. They would take a fight, win the fight, and then that would just cost you like an entire lane, basically.
Is Death Prophet going to come back in this patch?
I think so.
I think she might.
I think she's perfectly viable. NP is.
She was viable last
Yeah,
patch.
exactly.
And I saw a lot of games during the Summit qualifiers. MP was pulling it out. Most of the time, it was either banned or picked pretty much.
And if you look at the tempo the hero plays at, if she was viable last patch, she's got to be at least decent this patch.
All right, here's another one for you. Because this hero has gotten a lot of power creep over the last few patches.
What, Brewmaster?
It's actually kind of insane the amount of damage she does. Broodmother.
Yeah, where's that hero?
That hero, if you actually just look at like some of the stats and stuff, is actually kind of crazy. Like the amount of damage you get and everything. But again, I think you don't move around enough.
It's not a pushing hero anymore. It's more of a fighting hero. Just dominate the lane, get some with her talents and Midas. You get so much XP. You outlevel pretty much everyone. And with the changes for the camps in the forest, you can farm so much more. Dominate the enemy forest as well.
Oh. So we do have a draft. Faceless have chosen to take out the Wisp and the Darkseer, so the Lycan is on board, and Liquid possibly taking a cue from some of the games yesterday are going to open with that lane-dominating support. We saw FY have a great game in a loss on this area yesterday.
I like Ogre because the tree's still out in the table as well. I think Ogre is probably one of the best supports to have against a tree.
Yeah, because of Ignite for those who don't know. The thing about Darkseer, I mean the hero has been nerfed since what 20 patches ago, and still one of the top heroes.
Vacuum cooldown increased.
What do we expect in the next patch for Darkseer? His vacuum has like 3 charges whole game.
Well, I tell you what, Abaddon has definitely been a hero that Faceless has been super successful with. 6-1 in the last 7 games, and you guys were talking about Ice earlier and how active he can be. One of the things I really like about Ice's Abaddon is that he can go the relatively greedy build. He can go minus radius on this hero, and it still feels like he's active around the map.
I'm not set on Abaddon for this patch though. I feel like this hero is just a bit too slow. Right, the Abaddon likes to be able to kind of stay in his lane and pressure that. And part of the advantages was that you had a 4 position that was always roaming, so there was only one other support to face up against, and then that support had to do it had to eventually move out of lane or farm off jungle or something, in which case it left you in a 1v1. But in this patch, I feel like that's a lot less likely. You're not going to have those, I'm level 5, I'm level 7, I'm level 9, and I'm 1v1 against a carry. I'm going to be level 3
against level 5 carry who's going to deny pretty much everything, and there's no shrine. So you really need, as an offlaner, you really need to be careful right now. And if you're having a good duo safe lane, even a trial lane, you should be as aggressive as you can. Just try to force him out, because offlaners before the builds were pretty much on a melee hero PMS plus 1 set of tangos. Now I think they need to change the builds, get more regen, probably just a stout shield into tangos plus flask.
This is a fascinating draft so far. This is like a hate draft from both teams. You see CM banned frequently against Faceless, Abaddon often as well. Ogre is extremely popular in SCA. It's like a first pick, first ban for a lot of teams. So Liquid went ahead and took that Ogre, and then you see Ogre would often be paired with Troll, especially by Liquid as well. So it almost feels like Faceless gets their Abaddon. They take the Troll away from Liquid in the pairing with the Ogre, and then Bristleback, a hero that we've also seen Faceless run quite a bit, especially recently in Kiev as well, and afterwards. also being taken by Liquid, and the Slark. So this is, so you have 2 of GH's heroes banned as well from Faceless. So this is like a hate draft we have going on here. It's really interesting.
I guess when you don't really have like, if you don't have like the most lockdown idea of what the patch is about, you might as well force your draft against the enemy team as much as possible, right?
What I fear for Bristleback, there's no Crystal Maiden, there's no Io, there's no Coddle, so I'm not sure about his mana pool. That hero is pretty useless without it. I saw a game where Envy was playing it safe lane, and the hero couldn't do much that game. I mean, they won the games, but still, you lack mana pool.
I believe the thing I say about the Bristle pick for Liquid is I believe that they've played all 3 cores on it, and they've at least played it in all 3 lanes. I've seen that, and I think Miracle even had the odd game on it.
It might be maybe Bristleback. Like, I still kind of think it's an okay mid, but maybe it goes back to the offlane again with some sort of support, because it's kind of like a Tidehunter, right? The very efficient use of regeneration allows you to have a longer presence in lane against supports.
Although
I'm not sure.
Both teams still lacking in initiation right now. You really, the Abaddon draft that I think you're thinking of yesterday, Cap, when you're expressing your doubt about the hero, although that was a decent point, he was 5th picked, and the team that picked him just had no kind of initiation. You still have to have a way to start fights.
Yeah, part of the deal is I played so much Abaddon last patch.
Oh yeah,
and I tried it this patch, and I just can't
didn't
really
work?
get my I don't know. It feels wrong.
Well, there was that game yesterday. VGJ ran him with the Lifestealer, Troll, and the Baden. And
Yeah, that was the 5th. Yeah,
Oh,
that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, not having initiation for that game was real bad. And I see kind of the same thing. You have a disruptor, but you don't have an aggressive offlaner to force things for you.
Yeah.
Again, you don't want to be reacting as a disruptor. You want to be taking the first step in team fights, setting up an initiator that allows you to be able to follow up with the static storm and win the team fight, and then get the extra kill with the glimpse. You don't want to be reacting to the enemy.
There's your initiation.
As you said, Disruptor is not a initiation hero. He needs someone to set it up first. He's better when you kill one hero, then you start chasing. That's where he excels. With Slaughter, they have pretty much a lot of tanky heroes. Slaughter, Troll, Abaddon. This hero is going to be really hard to take down.
Now, are you a little bit surprised that that's a Slaughter over the Axe there?
Slaughter instead of Axe, you said?
After a Dazzle pick, I thought that might have been an Axe.
They needed a 4-position initiator, don't they? Isn't Abaddon still offlane?
I think he's probably still offlane, but I think in that when the matchup dictates it, I think you can still move Abaddon to a 4.
I think in this draft we've seen a lot of taking the opponent's hero in that spot, either banning or picking it yourself. I think Slaughter would have filled that function for Liquid as well. You have the minus armor synergy with the Bristleback and the Dazzle too, and something that maybe Abaddon doesn't really want to play against.
Poppy would have pulled out position 4X right here.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it. Easily. Well, they got rid of the Slark against Bristleback. Hard to play against, especially in the late game. You're just stats for Slark. Also Silver Edge Carrier. Faceless has 1 in Troll, but that will not come that fast, I guess. SNY, maybe a BKB if needed. From the 4 heroes on Liquid, BKB not needed right now, especially with the Abaddon by his side, so his build could be a SNY into Silver Edge.
So what do we think about this Troll for Faceless? Is this mid or safe lane?
Oh, the Troll.
Yesterday, who did? VGJ? They played Troll mid. I don't think that hero is that strong, especially with the new Forest. I mean, he can farm the lane and the Forest. That's why he's good, especially when you're playing Dire.
It's going to be interesting, though. One of the things about this patch that I think is going to be a real challenge for Faceless, they're going to have to find a new hero pool for Jabs, because I'm not convinced that either Invoker or Ember Spirit are going to be top-tier heroes in this patch, and I'm not sure about the Alchemist by any means.
Well, there's a Tinker that we thought was going to get stronger and get more play this patch.
That's true. That's a good point. That's from a while back, but he's very good on that hero.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the part of the problem with the Troll safe lane, I think it's preferred to be safe lane, but I think the Bristleback is off lane with the Dazzle or maybe the Ogre. I'm not sure which they have there. And I think Bristleback is very effective at being able to deal with Troll in the laning phase. As far as mids go to replace that, though, if Troll is safe lane, OD is out there for Faceless. I still think OD is very slow, but it does match up well against most of these teams. You got a Shallow Grave hero. It's good versus Ursa as well as Bristleback because it takes them out of the fight, particularly when Enrage is a problem.
Yeah. And also when you grave someone, you can just steal so much int from them. Yeah.
And you've got good supporting heroes, right? Abaddon gives you a lot of defense. You've got Troll with the extra attack speed. You've got good controlling supports for Disruptor and Slardar.
So. And they have nothing. If they pick OD, let's say Faceless, they have nothing to stop them with. They don't have any classic initiation besides Ursa. Once he gets a Blink Dagger,
they've only run
he should
OD
have a Hurricane Pike, just push him away.
It's going to be tricky laning for Faceless. Abaddon, among the heroes that he maybe doesn't want to lane against as much, Ursa is among them as well, just having that very quick burst, especially early on. And then for the Dazzle Bristleback, if that ends up being a dual lane, which I agree with you, I think it's going to go that direction. Very difficult for a lane with a Troll in it to bring down early as well, again, kind of lacking that burst. So how Faceless runs, if they choose to switch up their lanes a little bit and get a better matchup, I could be...
Do you need to ban Lina as Liquid? Because I was thinking that like Lina and Quap and these kind of heroes are both are kind of valuable for both team at this point in time because they're early tempo controllers. But Liquid is so tanky that it's really hard for Lina to actually play this game, despite it looking like it kind of fits Faceless' lineup.
But this is where, again, that limited hero pool for your mid really hurts you. When you look at, since 7.0, 1 and 2 on Outworld Devourer and 0 and 2 on Lina is Faceless.
10 seconds remaining.
What you said, it's probably going to be Bristol and Dazzle offlane. I don't think Liquid wants to commit to, let's say, mid Ursa that early. Because,
oh, and they take the Tinker away. Oh my god, this is a really good draft.
Instant Storm Spirit
Tinker,
yeah, but...
Well, that's the problem for Liquid right now. They don't have anything to catch that Storm with. They got nothing, no disable.
They don't, but do you think that the Storm gets off to a good enough start that even matters?
I mean, he's got Ogre in his lane because I think Ursa is 1v1 against Abaddon to start, and then they have Tinker plus Ogre mid against the Storm. What do they have on Faceless to contest that, support-wise? They had Slardar, right?
Slardar,
yeah,
that's not...
Their lanes are too weak.
Their lanes are weak. But Storm Spirit can still take stacks and stuff.
All right. Let's go for predictions, guys, real quickly. Jack?
I like Liquid Draft. I like Liquid Draft. In terms of playing fast, I think this fits them. I think the Bristleback reaches a timing where it's very hard to fight into him, and he is that kind of frontliner for you to take objectives and to protect the backline. I think Liquid has a better draft here. I like Liquid in this game.
I'll go with Faceless. I mentioned they don't have anything against Storm Spirit, but I'm concerned how they will do in the laning phase. They seem a lot weaker, but I think they will do good through the mid game and get the advantage back.
I think Faceless has a little bit better draft, but I agree with Jack. I think that the Bristleback, both Troll and Storm are going to be a little bit slow. Bristleback will reach a really good timing. I think Liquid is also maybe the better team, so I'll go Liquid.
Liquid all the way in this one. With that said, let's get day 2 started. Send it over to our very own LL Cool J, Lyrical and Lumi.
Nahaz, that was amazing. And hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're here on our second day. It's going to be Liquid facing off against Faceless. Lumi, you had a ton of chances to catch a bunch of the Faceless games, and you had an immediate impression from the draft from them. What is it that you think we're going to be seeing as we get into our countdown here?
I think a lot of the analysis brought to you from the panel is very on point. And I do agree that the lanes from Faceless is a bit weaker, so they have to adapt in the laning stage. And one of the strongest thing they could do to adapt is actually to go offensive. I hope they will be doing that because I do feel like the Abaddon versus the Ursa matchup is really, really bad for the Ursa. So I think you should put the Troll on it and have the 1v1 versus Bristleback versus Abaddon. We've seen actually this matchup multiple times between Ice and Rappy from Clutch Gamer, and Ice has been winning that matchup pretty much every single time when he does get it. So that's why I actually do believe they should actually put the Troll up top. But for now, it seems like Troll Warlord is going to be playing it pretty standard. In fact, it's going to be a 2-1-2 from Faceless. That means I think the Abaddon is going to have a very tough time against Ursa up top.
Yeah, we'll have to watch that. You do also see that wraparound that came in from XY. He moved throughout the entire jungle and baited out a sentry placement as well over on that high ground. And of course, that didn't end up catching the ward that's over by where the shrine is. Also worth noting, these teams have played each other a decent amount over the past couple of bits against DAC, also in Kiev. And they've sort of traded off the series so far. And well, it looks like Liquid wanting to be the ones to move in and make the aggressive play right here. And they are going to force Jabs away from his rune, at least for the moment. It looks like Kuro and Matumba will just back them off.
Ice should be actually coming in to steal the rune on the other side, and well, he does not get it, but at the end of the day, it's a, well, essentially 2 runes traded from either side. Great play by the Slaughter to deny that.
And Abba now also thinking about trying to come in and maybe steal a creep wave or just keep the pressure onto GH right here. I like the 3 question marks in his name. Pretty nice to throw that in there as well. The character.
Ice has been question marking for days, and he might give up first blood, and that is truly the question mark here.
Yeah, in trouble, slowed down for the moment. Does still have that Orb of Venom. The Earthshock is there as well. They don't have another Aphotic Shield, and well, looks like he's still just going to be able to make a little walk away, pull down a range creep for himself as well.
Yep, he's going to make Ursa miss at least a creep kill or 2, but at the same time, you don't have the shrine to fall back onto, so this is truly the walk of shame. He does have the teleport scroll purchase, so he could get right back into it. Determining on how the creep equilibrium grows, he might actually be able to find himself the quick level 2, you know, after this random scuffle.
Yeah. So, you know, the initial early laning stage so far, it does look like it's just going to be the stock and standard. Miracle does have a little bit of help here in the mid lane from Kuro playing on this Ogre, and Jab still trying to CS the best of his abilities as well, as Kuro's going to take some creeps. They have some amount of damage onto him here. The slow's coming in as well. XY, he's going to have another stun as well, and they could potentially bring down the big and tanky Ogre. XY drawn first blood against Kuro, and Miracle looking for the follow-up, able to find it as well. Just a bloodbath here mid.
You know, you say stock and standard. I do believe Faceless have the weaker stock and standard lane situation, but that first blood was so clutch by XY. And let's not forget he also secured the rune early on for Faceless, so very well played here by the Slaughter.
Yeah, very well done. And again, more pressure is now going to be mounted. You have the Abaddon who's been able to play his way away from that Ursa. And I think it's that early boots pickup. A very interesting decision there for Ice. Makes a ton of sense. You want to make sure you can keep that little separation away. And I think that's... I mean, is that enough of a determining factor where he can get a lot out of this lane? There's no way to lock him down, really.
I believe so. And, you know, even if you take Dazzle Poison Touch, which is not too common early on, you still have the Aphotic Shield to break it off. So I think Ice understands that he could play cocky. And when he does play cocky, he can get away with a lot in this lane. And so far, he is.
Yeah. Black, in the meantime, down here bottom, is facing off against the Bristleback. A little bit of a tough matchup. Troller does get armor, but can sometimes be a little bit rough. Just the strength of that Bristleback once he starts to get those levels up is... It seems like we're just kind of having this semi-dual mid type of thing. Ochre is down there by where the rune was as well, and it feels like there could be some more movement into here again as they're wrapping around on a Miracle. You do have Kuro coming in with an Isvisor as well. Have a little bit of the stun coming out, but don't decide to go for it fully.
Yeah, mostly just harass. Jabs trying to get his last hit going, and you can see that Miracle is slowly pulling ahead in terms of the last hit and deny department. And that is going to be a big deal. Jabs so does get the bottom regen and start overloading away to get a couple more last hits.
What a world we live in now where you just got this dual mids over and over again. Tried to break the bottle regen there of Miracle. Didn't end up working out. And so far, it's relatively even in terms of CS, though Miracle's a little bit ahead in terms of denies, with none for the supports, obviously.
I actually think Ice is doing a lot better than what I would have given credit him for, because traditionally in the past, Abaddon has been going for, you know, the poor man's shield, just basically a ton of regen and just basically stick in the lane, right? And I don't think that actually works in this patch anymore. So great adjustment for Ice. Instead of just standing there and tanking the hits, he's just evading them all together with the boots. And you can see the big difference here is that mind control.
Oh, in the jungle, Jabs, he's just going to get brought down here.
Yes, he is.
Kuro just punches him to death.
Kuro might get the return kill onto him, because you got to keep in mind Storm will be porting back relatively soon. Great rotation here coming out from the Disruptor. That is going to be a return kill, I believe.
Well, they end up taking him down, and they break down the Slardar beforehand, so Kuro getting the XP for that. It ends up working out further into Liquid's favor off of that rotation.
Look at this adjustment by Miracle. He's not going for the standard build where you put a couple points into March of the Machine. He is maxing laser rockets. This is taking me back to like 2010 Tinker play.
I mean, he's upset. Both of these teams have a lot to prove in this. I don't think either were happy with their stance after Kiev, and obviously wanting to have a chance towards that direct invite moving forward and everything else. And of course, just winning the tournament. These teams and these players want to win. As Nuts is going to get punched in the face a couple more times as Kuro wants to man up against him. There's a lot of damage coming out. Kuro is now under a little bit of fire himself. They even brought in Black from the safe lane, and well, he ends up going down. Another death for Kuro.
I just want to point a little bit more about the Storm build. The fact that he's going for max laser rocket means once he gets a quick BOT, it's not a, let's go back into jungle and farm the jungle multiple lanes. He's going to join the Ursa and Bristleback to fight a lot, which seems to be the tempo of this new draft. And the fact that Faceless is pulling a little bit ahead in terms of the laning stage, I think is going to, well, weather this Storm a little bit.
Well, it's sort of tough, though, because like you look at the way it's going, and you do still have that CS pretty heavily into the favor of Liquid, and you see that Abaddon, while he's been able to get some experience in that lane, he still has been forced to return back to home as well. So it's sort of, I'm still waiting to see, because it feels as if those first couple of fights are going to be very determinative of where the game goes from here.
I mean, something that was said in the analysis, and I need to repeat, is that once Storm takes off, there is no lockdown for him. Like, you have, what, a Fire Blast to control him? And maybe when Basher comes out from the Ursa, but that's a long time from now. So I think if Faceless could go into the mid-game intact, they are going to be pretty much unstoppable. The question is whether this Storm will have the good laning stage. So far, he is struggling mightily. Look at the difference in terms of deny. Tinker is up 17 denies over the Storm Spirit. We have almost a level 7 Tinker to a level 5.5 Storm Spirit. This is one of the biggest lane disparity you could have.
Yeah. Black just trying to force back Kuro as well. They're running into a couple of issues there. I mean, for goodness sake, the Dazzle has 12 CS at this point on Liquid as well. Miracle, in the meantime, he's still sort of holding on to the rest of those points after taking 3 in Laser and the 2 in Rockets. Might think about taking more if there's a fight that breaks out, but can save it up for the March of the Machines as well.
He's actually going to have a very early timed BOTs, probably like 8.5 minutes, which is absolutely absurd, considering that his team hasn't really been stacking for him. Neither, like, he hasn't really needed to take any stacks. So, bottom lane here, Mind Control looks like he will be going down.
Yeah, a nice pickup here. The Disruptor coming in. It's still a little bit of the Quill's damage being expended, but they need to make sure that they are getting that Troll Warlord off to a good start. Now, taking a look at the net worths, you can see Tinker leading the pack as the moment at least. But we'll have to see how those next couple minutes work out. As you get those Boots of Travel up, since he does have so many points in Laser, do you think he could start trying to wrap around to different lanes and find kills there?
I think that's the goal, right? Like, once Matumba Man gets the Blink Dagger, he's going to join the Big Bear to actually jump in simultaneously and get really quick kills.
Ooh, GH, maybe in a little bit of trouble. They also have some other rotations that are coming in from the supports of Faceless.
Yep. This is Faceless's bread and butter early game. They love to smoke for double roam supports. And here comes, I think Matumba Man might be actually going down here. GH does have the 1 point to grave. Matumba Man pops the, well, looks like they want to pick off the support first, and they'll leave the carry. Do they have vision on him? Yes, they do. The TP will get canceled, and GH is left for dead here.
Yeah, I mean, you take that kill. This is 4 heroes in the top lane.
Yep.
Both supports rotate. You bring in Black, and in the meantime, Mind Control is taking the Tier 1 tower in the bottom lane. I think you are perfectly happy with that if you're Liquid, although they won't be able to get the tower.
This is actually pretty big for Mind Control. I mean, the panel has been saying that Mind Control has not been playing. Well, hold that thought here. Matumba Man picks a random nuts in the jungle.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Matumba Man, or sorry, Mind Control needs to really catch back up. Those 2 kills on him earlier, it hurts a offlane Bristleback very much so. He needs to have a good early game, and so far he's not getting it.
And look at Liquid right here in the mid lane. They are just barreling down these lanes right now. Matumba Man coming in as well after they found that kill in the top side on the Dazzle. They're ready to fight, and it's looking like it might actually end up turning into a big one. Miracle is caught for the moment with the Thunderstrike. Doesn't have a ton of mana to work with either, but the Haste Strip's going to be able to get him away, and Jabs barely able to make the jump of Miracle. Thinking about running him down. They're looking for the laser. It's off cooldown in just 1 second, but he's forced to turn and run away. They do still have Chase if they want to go for it with a Tier 1 tower already down. Miracle looking for the opening, but not going to take it.
Miracle was just like 2 mana short of a laser. That would have been a guaranteed kill on the Storm Slayer, which would have been huge for him. Jabs, I would actually compare him to Mind Control for Faceless, where traditionally he has been superb as a mid player, but as of late has really fallen off. I feel like this game, he needs to be the one that's taking off and taking over this game because the draft enables him to do so. There is one stun to slow him down. On the bottom side, he's looking for a solo kill. Mind control would be big if he could pick it up, and looks like he should be able to.
Wow,
Not going to go for it.
They still had the stick charges also, and with Miracle coming a little too scary. But they are actually going for a round 2 here, maybe. Nuts does have the glimpse. Is going to pull Kuro in, and that is going to be a pretty quick and easy pickoff. They're thinking about sticking around in that area, Liquid are, but it looks like those back out now after the death.
So I think for the next couple of minutes, Faceless needs to give XY a free lane to get to his Blink Dagger. They need to give Ice now space to catch back up. Keep in mind that he did have the tough early lane. And now it's up to the rest of 3 Faceless members to actually drive up the tempo for the team. Of course, for Team Liquid, well, Roshan is going to get checked here.
Oh, yeah, they're coming in. Black wanting to contest a little bit, and it does look like Liquid are still sort of hanging on to that high ground, but it's not easy to just walk in there and take down Roche. With Storm Spirit able to zip in and Disruptor, you know, dropping down some things as well. A little too scary.
Yep. XY checks it again.
They did drop down that Invis rune as well, so Liquid would spot out XY if he was in the area.
Oh, they're scanning on top of him. They know he's here. Sentry Ward is going to get dropped down.
Oh my god, they caught him right there. Right clicks.
Okay,
XY almost dead. They're still in the Sentry range, and it doesn't matter. He's already dead.
What a glimpse.
It looks like XY will be able to make that escape.
So recently I've overheard a conversation between Nuts and his teammates debating which talent to take at 15. Because him and his teammates are making both very strong cases for the Thunderstrike talent or the Kinetic Field cooldown talent. I'm curious to see what he thinks is the optimal talent for this game.
Yeah. Still a little ways away. Does have that level 6 now. Glimpse is off cooldown 2 seconds, but they're not going to decide to go for mind control there.
I feel like Kinetic Field is generally the one you want to take, especially if it's a very fighting-heavy game. And this game is looking to build into one when you have cores like Bristleback and Ursa on the other side. Being able to control these melee heroes is actually very, very key.
So you talked a little bit about it, and the panel did as well, that instant pick that we got from the Storm Spirit at the beginning, or at the very tail end of the draft. Obviously a great counter to the Tinker as far as being able to find him in the trees and such. When's the point where that starts to become a really big issue for Miracle in this game?
I mean,
is it like an item, or is it more
from the timing of Jabs' Bloodstone till when Team Liquid picks up items that could counter the Storm? So Hex is coming out from the Tinker to Ursa's Blink Dagger. So these 2 items could quote-unquote kill the Storm. And that's a pretty big timing window. You have like at least 10 to maybe 15 minutes where Jabs will get the Bloodstone. Obviously, Jabs, I think he's underfarmed for a Storm, and Tinker is very overfarmed for where he should be at this point. So that timing window for Faceless will be shrunken down.
Stupendous.
Okay. We'll have to keep our eyes on it. The Vlad's is there for Matumba. They're going to be able to move in and take Roshan if they can just get a pickoff or something else along those lines. Faceless did move in for a smoke play, and we haven't really seen a great rotation, but there is now going to be a TP for mind control here, as well as Miracle in the area. I don't know if they can really do this, though, without that Blink Dagger on Slardar, even with the level 6 up on the Disruptor.
Yeah, that's why I previously advocated on XY just kind of do a little bit more selfish play and farming for the Blink. But for now, he's playing very team-centric, making sure that the Ursa does not get away with the Aegis, making sure that he's still running through the jungle, checking out where the Tinker might be, checking out where the Ursa might be. But every second that he does not have the Blink, they are lacking one weapon to initiate against a possible Roche fight or picking off Tinker.
Yeah. So as far as objectives are concerned around the rest of the map, we did see 2 Tier 1 towers taken down by Liquid at the early stages of this game. And another one is starting to get a good amount of damage done to it as well up top here, as it looks like they should be able to secure this one with Disruptor and Abaddon sort of walking away and backing out. This should be a pretty free tower for Team Liquid up here top.
Yep.
Radiant's top tower has fallen.
Hand of Midas Abaddon. Are you surprised at all? When we were looking at the draft, you said that was last patch. So you weren't loving the Abba pick.
I mean, I think given the nature of the game, if he wants to remain relevant, I think the Midas first is pretty apt. And honestly, I don't think Faceless with their weak laning lineup could actually take the fight to Team Liquid anyway. So Storm needs his Bloodstone. Might as well take the time off to farm up some key items to have a stronger mid-game. Faceless, if they're going to win this game, is through a stronger mid-game, which unfortunately they're going to have to give up an Aegis to Liquid to get.
Yeah, you never want to have that happen. And with that Aegis on Matumba Man, he's still a little ways away from Blink, which would just take that hero to the next level. But you also, I believe, just saw Blink Dagger finished as well for the Tinker. Not mistaken. They don't really have a great way to run him down. But also an interesting build here. Mind Control going for the mechanism.
Yeah.
Has Soulring as well to deal with the mana issues.
I mean, normally you go for like a Vanguard Solar Crest, but this is probably the most efficient 2,300 gold he could spend to actually lead aggressive team play. I mean, this patch, from what we've seen, it's all about those early game fights and early game pushes. So Mech, probably one of the best items that you could get for your team.
Now Miracle doing a nice little play here to push out the creep waves, also send his March of the Machines in such a way that he had already blinked out by the time Storm saw that they were coming, so they weren't able to find him. Though Jabs is invis right now.
Yep. I mean, if they ever get Thunderstrike on Miracle, he is a free kill. But, of course, he is going to be very careful away from Nuts.
Playing in the shadows. Kuro just going to walk right into Ice, Ice, Ice here, but Juke's around the corner. Kuro might be in some ability to find himself a kill. Ice, Ice, Ice just gone in an instant.
Yep. Ultimate was still on cooldown. Notice that Kuro never used Fire Blast in that engagement, because once Fire Blast is used, a Photic Shield or even, a Photic Shield on TP, and there's really no way for them to stop that TP. So Kuroki just stalked after the Abaddon, waited for support from the Tinker, and that was a guaranteed kill on the Abaddon.
Well, I feel like we've seen this story before as far as this patch is concerned. You get that first initial Roshan, you take down a lot of the towers around the map, and you build to a point where when you get that second Rosh with Cheese, you're going to be able to find yourselves going high ground. And I'm trying to figure out how Faceless deal with this. What's their play as far as making moves around the map? Like, it feels like winning a team fight at this point is so difficult.
I think it's really a difference in terms of power peaks, because Faceless is going to be taking off relatively soon. Abaddon just finished the Midas, so he needs a little bit longer, but Blink Dagger on Slaughter, Troll picking up his first major item, and of course the Bloodstone on Storm. This is a very strong peak timing. Right now, Faceless is really just getting punched left and right, but soon there will be a time where they can start fighting back.
I mean, it's a beautiful dream. I don't want to deny that, but look at these guys. Look at them.
That's how the book
up
goes,
on high
right?
ground.
Yep, and look at what Kuro's doing. He is bloodlusting that siege unit, getting that extra, siege damage going on.
All right, beautiful. The patch working into their favor. You still have Mind Control hitting away.
Slaughter Crush, this is the fight.
All right, looking for that opening. Mind Control still holding on to that mechanism. Does look like they're going back forward. That's a 3-person crush. A pretty good start. The Static Storm as well. It's caught onto 2. Can they kill these heroes off, though? The Grave comes out. Gonna keep Matumba Man alive, and to be honest, he already had the Aegis anyways. They're not going to be able to find the kills, and now they spent their load.
That was a great look for Faceless, and now Ursa's jumping in, looking for the solo kill, and laser rockets on the backline, making sure they do get the one. I'm surprised that they won on Matumba Man. Matumba Man had Aegis. Never mind the Grave. I think the other cores were perhaps an easier kill, and that mechanism first on Mind Control really turned that fight around. Matumba Man droning people out still, and now they're going to focus on the Raxes.
And Miracle's back in with a full creep wave. Black nowhere near a BKB. He has Yasha Vlad's at this point, almost dying to the Ignite as he runs back to the base. Liquid are just dominating this game. 17 minutes in, it's a lane of Rax gone.
I think this game was won through itemization. If it's going to be won by Team Liquid, it's just the early mech. And well, hold that thought here. Glimpse back here. They will kill Matumba Man, but now he's got Aegis. He's got Grave backup from the Dazzle. I don't think they can kill him a second time.
Well, they're still chasing. Matumba Man brought fairly low. They have the heal to turn it back around. The stun onto 2. They have the Grave available, as you said, but it's not there in time. And now Mind Control may be under a little bit of fire. Well, have Liquid gone too deep? End up popping that mech, not yet. Still hanging on to it. 17 wand charges as well for Mind Control. And it looks like they will be able to back out for the moment. But Faceless just going to have to lick their wounds and come up with something else here.
Yeah, I mean, the Dazzle Grave, it might look like he was out of position, but you got to keep in mind that XY was zoning on the back line, making sure that he's crushing the Dazzle. Dazzle had to step away from the AoE of Slaughter, and as a result, he could not get in range for the Grave. So it was more well play on XY than poor play on GH's part. But still, Faceless down 1 Rax. I mean, technically, this is where the draft could take off, but there's just down so much economically now. 8,000 net worth deficit. Remember, I think that the Jab Storm, the power of that Storm, the time window is when the Bashers are coming out, which I imagine that's going to be what Matumba Man's working towards next.
This is such a cool and well-designed draft here from Liquid. It feels like they had really good answers. They recognized what that timing was that they wanted to hit.
Right.
And you think about the next couple of minutes here when Roche ends up respawning, they're going to have already, gold coming in from the shrines that they can now take down. They're going to have, that cheese as well online, and already a lot of hard heroes to kill off. It's feeling like they're going to need to find something like a Tinker pick off over and over again.
Which Miracle has been extremely careful about not getting picked off at all. Obviously, generally, once you get the blink, a really good Tinker player will always be in the trees. And the Storm was, quote-unquote, the counter pick here, right? He should be finding the Storm, but he's just trying to... Jabs is trying to make sure to get his own farm going.
I mean, it's all well and good to have these counters and stuff, but if you never get into the items that allow you to get there, it's too much. And, well, a 10,000, almost 11,000 net worth Tinker who's just running the gamut through the jungle and has Aether Lens now down and also building towards the Dagon.
Jeez. And they have Crimson finished as well. You have Mech Crimson in 20 minutes of gameplay. We already talked about how Faceless lack damage. How are you going to punch these two very good defensive items?
All right, well, Abba, I mean, he's taking the bottom tier 1 tower. There's going to give it a little bit more influx of gold, but Mind Control doesn't care. They've got Weave on this guy. They've got everything. 33 armor. More armor than minutes in the game. It's a rough one indeed, as the tier 3 tower is going to start to go down. And
oh my god, March of Machine, how do you defend against this?
And rocket spam every damn thing. Yep. Liquid just slowly taking the life and strangling Faceless in this
I wouldn't
one.
say very slowly. This game is ending rather quickly. I think Faceless has one more go at it, but Mind Control sitting in the front. You got rockets coming in from the back line. It's really hard to defend this.
All right, well, there's the jump in from Matumba. They have a good Sack Storm, but Slardar's already gone. No crush used. Disruptor is out of there as well. Liquid are just raffle stomping Faceless.
Yep, Raffle Stomp is the word I like to use here as well. Team Liquid dominating within the Faceless base. You know, the Faceless coach Winter once told me, Dota is a game about timing. And I feel like Team Liquid, with their itemization, the mech, and the quick Crimson from the Bristleback, has, like, this draft in the mid-game, and we are in the mid-game now, that Faceless should win this draft. Unfortunately, the timing window of these two itemization has allowed Team Liquid to extend their early game advantage and just snowball completely out of control. This game never had a mid-game for Faceless. The game was just over from the laning stage, it felt like.
And the cool thing about this, too, is, like, I think part of it is that Soul Ring, because the panel was talking about, as we're going to see Ice potentially go down, the mana problems that Bristleback has. And he ended up picking up Tread's Soul Ring, which allows him to be efficient with those, Tread switches and constantly spamming it out in that fashion. It's a really cool build.
Yeah, I completely overlooked it with that fact. Obviously, he has a magic wand, which is pretty standard for most Bristleback. But you're right, that Soul Ring. I mean, let's not forget that Bristleback does have very good intelligence growth for a strength hero.
Right.
So as he levels up, he makes up on that mana pool. But you're right, for those early, like, couple of level 6, 7, 8, that Soul Ring is coming into big.
Well, one last lane of barracks, and it feels like movement speed is going to be the only thing barring Liquid from ending this game quickly, as they can just walk wherever the hell they damn please. Faceless, they're moving up towards the top tier 1 tower, though Tinker is still slowing that down slightly. And they will be able to take it down finally.
I think Faceless is completely surprised by how fast this game has ended. Going back to your question, like, do you think Ice is correct in buying that Hanamitis? At the time, I was like, okay, we're losing the lane a little bit. We could recover in the mid game. And I think maybe he thought that too, but hindsight's 2020. This is not the speed, not the tempo that Faceless is allowed to be played at.
Yeah. Well, Dagon, multiple levels are done. They are walking up towards high ground right now. Missiles are going. Black, is he anywhere near that BKB as of yet?
No.
It's
oh, no, he has it. He has the BKB.
Okay, he does have it.
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing what they're showing us here is Say still taking some damage. There's XY as well as the Disruptor off to the side, but Kuro is walking over this direction. Now the smoke ended up popping. They spot him out. The crush only connects onto the Ogre. Matumba Man jumps in on him instead, and they do have that static storm down, but there's nothing at all. Miracle is the one who is going to be able to deal the damage, find the kills, and Jabs can only look on in dismay as the rest of his team has already been brought down, and he's dead as well. Matumba Man beats down Black. The buybacks happen from the Dazzle, but this game is freaking over.
What a play. The last team fight, multiple team fights, we saw Faceless pressure to actually kill the Dazzle first, but because you're so far behind, the Dazzle takes a bit of time to kill. And as you're going for the Dazzle, the rest of your team is getting absolutely decimated by the Tinker Rockets, by the Ursa Warrior. A lot of small, intricate plays here by Team Liquid that I would love more time to talk about, but unfortunately, this is yet another 25-minute GG.
I know.
Welcome to 6.07. Or 7.06, rather. 6.07 was like 10 years ago.
I mean, we can welcome him to that, too.
Sure.
Maybe it's a return to some of that. But to me, it was like, it felt vicious, right? Like, there's just running at him constantly. The big bear man was just eating people up. As far as sort of MVP for you or anybody that really stood out, a performance in particular that you really liked?
No, this was more of a team thing. So I guess Kuro for drafting up the strategy.
Totally.
Very well done.
Maybe a little bit to the coaches, managers, whatever. We'll throw some stuff their way as well. But I do believe we have some more people that want to talk about it. 4 people on the panel. I don't think that they thought they'd be back out here so quickly. What did you guys think of the game?
What a match, as that was all about tempo, guys. I think that last pick Storm was a good idea, but the concern that we had was validated. Never really got going into the mid game by Faceless.
Yeah, I think that the Ursa and Bristleback timings there were just like, they were so dominant in that 15-minute marker, right? I think that like once you secure your laning phase advantage and then you're able to go in like 15-minute window, you just kind of like stay together and you take towers, and you know this Tinker's making sure that they never lose to a split push, and they're just like, you don't lose the game at that point in time unless the enemy team just completely outplays you in a team fight.
And their items were so on point. Said that Bristleback will have a lack of mana. He went for Soul Ring, which turned out to be super good. Also went for Mech just to tank it up. Also a Crimson Guard. I don't think he even used it. They were so far ahead. This is the classic game, actually, of classic snowball game. I was wrong, but
they also had Vlads and Arcane Boots. It was like, I was thinking the same thing. You know, he's going to have mana issues, but the Soul Ring for when he was by himself, and then, you know, the Vlads and the Arcane Boots, and then just being able to stick together, they were just always able to kind of like always be pretty healthy and force fight after fight.
Yeah.
Stick also Mech gives you enough stats, so.
No, we talked about that as one of the few sort of little bones that were thrown to offlaners in the wake of Shrines being nerfed, is that Soul Ring now builds out of the mango. So you do get a little bit more early efficiency out of that item. As we take a look at the stats from that last game, Mind Control certainly delivering on that Bristleback pick. And of course, I really thought that the key part of that draft, I was a little disappointed that Faceless came out with a very last patch kind of strat lineup. This is very, very similar to something that they've been doing, but I thought the key part of the draft was them taking the Tinker away from Faceless.
I think big problem in this patch will be for the teams who pick offlaners like a Baron who are not active early game, that they'll just end up being under-leveled, under-farmed, just being stuck in your own base.
I do want to give a lot of credit, though, to XY on his slaughter. He was in on all 7 of his team's kills through the 18-minute mark. Obviously, the farm disadvantage was already racking up. The kill count was relatively even at that point, though, but just too slow to develop was this lineup.
Those numbers look good on paper, but it was pretty much all the kills on Ogre, who was in enemy forest, just providing intel, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a big difference, right?
Yeah, they didn't get any big hero kills. Not a kill on Ursa, not a kill on Bristol, not on Tinker.
Sure, but that's partly what happens when you have weak lanes, right? What's one support supposed to do? I mean, he was doing what he could.
I think Kuro definitely did. He did so much work on the Ogre. Like, he created so much space for the Bristleback. They took both the mid and the safe lane tower away from Faceless super early on. I mean, Mind Control got so much farm out of his off lane. It was kind of crazy, and so much of that comes down to Kuro and his active playstyle of like just kind of always putting himself in mid, then he would rotate down to bottom lane. And then like the difference is like the Slordar and what he's doing, he's not creating space for anybody. He's just trying to counter what this Ogre is doing, which means our Abaddon is kind of left out of the pool. So I think that maybe these supports like this Ogre, maybe they're actually more of a key to the patch than any of the cores that we've talked about, right? Is that just making sure that you secure the lanes the most aggressive way that you can, it's just such a huge advantage, and you very rarely are going to be giving that up.
I said that. I was saying that from very early on yesterday. I thought that that's something that's a little bit puzzling. Actually, all the way back to 6.88 is that the support meta at various points has become very condensed, a couple of top tiers, and yet you rarely see supports banned. I think that's going to change in this patch.
Yeah, we forgot our friend.
Yeah,
here,
we can't
Jack.
forget Jack.
No,
Come on, buddy.
Making great points. I mean, not much to add to that, but I gotta give a lot of credit to Liquid overall. I think this was a good draft from them. They end up taking a lot of Faceless as comfort heroes and using it better as part of a game plan, I think, in this game. And then you see the bristleback, the small choices they made as well, the itemization. This hero has many different item paths we've seen in the past. It might be more Vanguard Solar Crest or something like that. In this case, they get the mech, they get the Soul Ring off the build-up. They have the Dragon Lance for the quick stats and the armor, kind of the same reason that the Meepo would stack that up early on. And then with the talents, the choice of obviously agility and armor as well, up against the amp of Slardar, any kind of right click to bring him down. Like they itemized, like everything was in sync for their game plan. The Tinker pick as well, like filling that function for some teams as a late game damage and control source. In this case, as you said, to prevent the counter push, a strong bullying laner that is hard to go up one-on-one against for a lot of heroes to begin with, even without the Ogre. So I think just overall, like from the draft, the taking away picks, the banning some picks and taking them for themselves and executing that game plan, very impressive showing by Liquid.
I gotta say one thing about Dragonlance. I think that was more of a humiliation build.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, you can just buy Ogre.
I wasn't going to give you the stats on that, don't worry.
Go for BKB, S, and Y later on, just whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at the state of the game, I thought that both Tinker and OD would be like too slow for the patch. I thought that like that 15-minute window is usually where Tinker and OD want to be like spending a little bit more time farming. They're not comparatively to other mids, they're not going to be able to give you the same kind of team fight aspect, but what they really both give you, despite being a little bit more later game heroes, is lane domination. Right, and it seems like lane domination.
The deep push value.
Yeah, sure. But I think the Tinker and him being able to deal with split push is probably just as huge as the living armor that we talked about from the Dream Protector. But it seems like lane domination is a lesson we're going to learn every single day.
And
for
here at the
StarLadder
bottom
here.
of the screen, you see the betting odds on our next match from our sponsor, EGB.com. You can bet on entire series, individual matches, as well as picks and bans. And a little bit more, I thought that after that first match especially, that Liquid would be a little bit more of a favorite. Good price there you're still getting on Faceless.
Well, we said that it favors them more. This new patch seems like it's working out for them.
Yep.
So far, so good. We'll see in the game too. Still early to tell.
I still say, man, I was a little bit disappointed that this Faceless team came out with a draft that felt very last patch. I still think that in terms of their overall hero pool, with the exception of Jabs, which I think they have to address their mid picks, I still think that there are heroes that this team plays that are still very good in this patch. If you go back, they've had success on the Rubik. Back a couple of patches ago, they had a very good Earth Spirit for a while. I still think that this team can be very good.
I want to see Spirit Breaker.
Yeah.
I was looking, I thought Spirit Breaker would be picked up a little bit more in it was like Elements Pro Gaming, I think. They would like first pick Spirit Breaker into their Dream League games. And I think that hero is actually, like, it really fits this patch because it is kind of a lane dominator. It's also very movement heavy, which I think in like any heroes that have a lot of mobility are particularly valuable as you just kind of move around the map constantly trying to defend these pushes. I kind of want to see something like that for next patch or next game for Faceless. I think it would help offset what Kuro was able to accomplish with the Ogre Magi. Okay, well, let's hold that thought here because lots of thoughts about Game 1 as a little bit of a lopsided affair, but I think Faceless have a good chance to come back in Game 2. We are going to take a 5-minute break, show you some ads, but we will be right back with Game 2.